All right. So I'm here with Leslie today. Leslie Santa. Am I saying that right?
Yes, yes.
Yes. So thank you so much for being here in the Dance Mompreneur Podcast. Leslie is a dance mom. She's also an entrepreneur. She has two beautiful daughters that she's taking on a journey to, invest a lot in them with dance, with ballet. So today we're going to be talking a lot of cool stuff that I think is going to inspire the moms and also open up the room for conversations that all of our dance moms can benefit from being in this arena. So thank you for being here, Leslie.
Of
um,
course.
yes, and I would like to start with telling us, where has your journey with dance started? I don't know, did you have experience with dance prior to now having your daughters, or did it start when you had your daughters fall in love with dance?
Yes, so I was a dancer. I was a dancer and a cheerleader. I started, I think I was 4 years old in both. So I started doing both of those just naturally, just because I think my mom was like, well, she likes to, be creative. I'm sort of like an artist person naturally, I think. I just gravitate sort of that way. I also love to draw and, paint and things like that. So I think that's where it started for me was, she saw that and she's like, okay, well, let's just try these two things and see what you like. I was a dancer, primarily ballet, although we did do jazz and tap and things like that for musicality purposes, which is important, in the dance world anyway. Even if that's not your forte, it's important. But I did those things too. And then I also cheered and got my gymnastics, I guess, experience from being a cheerleader. Um, and I just that it just took off from there. Like, so I personally loved ballet the most of all of the things. Um, those that know me in real life know I'm very petite. So I'm just like a small person naturally. So it sort of just kind of happened that way. My best girlfriends love to say, well, Leslie never really grew past 8th grade. She's just kind of the same size. And I'm like, well, I don't know, like,
I'm the same.
it is what
I'm the
it is.
same.
I don't know what happened, but those kind of things I just fell in love with, and I was not a pushy kind of mom. I just thought, well, let's see where it might go for the girls, because they started out, both of them started out a little bit older than I was
Mhm.
in dance. So I kind of waited until I saw, well, are they naturally interested in doing this or something else? So yeah.
And it was dance the first thing that you decided to try it on as a sports for them, or no?
No, we started soccer and neither of them liked that. Very quickly found they did not like that. So I was like, oh, okay. So then that was the second thing we did is dance. So we started them just in a recreational environment first. So it was Eden first. She's my oldest. She's 9. She started in recreational and she did that 1 year and then went to competitive. And then Siggy, who was my middle one, she's 7. At the same place we were, she didn't even do rec. She just said, Mommy, I want to do what Sissy's doing, So we just put her right into comp just because
So
she seemed ready.
Okay. So
Yeah.
explain to me how that goes, because I'm always interested in seeing how different studios are. How was it for your studio? So did they have an audition for competition? If she was a child who decided to start a competition right away, what do they do? How does it go for her?
Okay, so in my, I can't attest for every studio. In my experience, though, both of the girls, Eden started out in rec, and then they approached and said, would you be interested in having her in a comp situation because she's showing, more interest. She seems like she would, it would be an appropriate place for her to go. And with Siggy, right away, they were just like, all right, she's, I would say with Siggy, it was more obvious by the way of like, she's my more animated child. So
Mhm.
she does everything big and, she's like a jazz girl. So she
Mhm.
does everything so big. And I think that just was like, okay, we don't even need to put her in a recreational environment. We'll just stick her right into that. And yes, they have an audition. You get a number, you try out in front of the studio owner and the teachers, and then they score you and like decide what classes you would be in. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's similar across
Okay.
the board to other studios.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good to know because I think some studios are different, and I never know. For my daughter, it was yeah, you anyone can audition any year. Obviously they have once a year, and it was more like, yes, you learn some different routines and then you try it in front of the teacher, but it was more an approach of everybody makes to the dance competition. Is a matter of what groups you're going to, so they
Correct.
try to
That's the
decide,
same.
which I think is the same, right? Yeah, and
Yes.
they try to decide which one you want to go. I mean, obviously they may have I think they had approached some people and say, hey, I think you might be ready. And other kids just wanted to try and found out and be like, hey, let's see. So
Right.
I'm always interested to see because I don't know how other studios are. So tell me, how was the world of dance competition for them? Because I know it's a big change, it's a big step. It requires a lot more from them in terms of studio
Yeah.
time and maturity and all of that. So how did they face all of those changes?
So they were pretty young still. So it was sort of like, it started out, I think, as another activity. We were not in very many routines at first because they were so little, and I didn't want to overwhelm. And I wanted to see how it was going, especially with Siggy, because I said, well, she's never had any dance experience at all. Like, she was brand new and didn't even do recreational for a year. She had no idea. So she started off a little slower than her sister as far as how many routines we were in for the competitions. But I mean, they seemed to enjoy themselves because it was just like, oh, this is something we're doing now instead of the other things that we've tried at that time, at that age, just because
Mhm.
they were young still. So I was just doing one thing and I'm like, okay, let's start with this and see what it is. Just like how I had done anything else. I did soccer that way. I
Mhm.
was feeling out how they felt about it.
And you have to kind of ease them into it and see how they are going to react because every child is different. Some kids are ready for more and be able to do, obviously I think the first year is the most laid back and great year for dance moms because it's just like, yay, you're usually not doing much. You're doing maybe like a group dance and this is it. So it's so exciting. And then usually after that, it starts becoming more, okay, adding another dance and adding this, but it's kind of nice for them to have that year or maybe a couple of years or maybe 3 years to kind of just ease their way in and make more friends. And so were they able to make friends easily? Did they feel closer to the girls once they were part of like the competition team? How did it feel for them?
Yeah, I mean, so the group that we were in of moms and girls all pretty much came up together. So we all, as far as, every year with an audition or groups they were placed in, they went similarly. Now, I will say, because Siggy is 2.5 years younger, she was an intermediate dancer and she remained there. Eden became an advanced dancer. I'm trying to think here because it's been a while. They've been doing it so long. I'm like, how? Okay. Yeah, she was probably around the same age Siggy started that she became an advanced dancer. And it wasn't
Mhm.
because of, it might have been because of like skills and Eden had previous experience more than her sister. But as far as it was the same group of moms and the same girls. So like, yes, it was like all their friends, like, oh, we all did it together all the whole way. So yeah, I mean, it
Mhm.
was easy. There was no transition, I guess. They started there and then they just kept going. So yeah.
Okay. So, and what you told me about your girls is that all of a sudden they started developing a more, at least you said you started with the oldest, that she started loving ballet more as she started being, hey, mom, I want to be a ballerina. And then you had to start having different eyes into, okay, what kind of training am I going to be able to provide her? Because we all know that in the world of dance, being a dancer and being a ballerina, they are not necessarily the same thing. You can have a girl who's a really good dancer. She may take, ballet as a foundation, but to be a ballerina, it's a whole different, world and aspect of, schools and training and all of that. So tell me, how did she find out that that's kind of the route that she wanted to go? And what did it change for you once you realized, okay, so I might have to consider different things here?
Well, also, so we started taking them to the ballet, my husband and I, when they were young, because that's something my parents did when we were young, my sister and I, my sister and I are 2.5 years apart too. So we both were, well, she ended up going a gymnast route and I was the dancer route. However, we both loved the ballet. Like we were like, oh, can we go? Can we go? Christmas time, and the spring shows, like we were going. So I said, well, let's start going. My husband at first was like, the ballet, I don't know. He
Okay.
wasn't, he has 3 sisters, but I don't think, he just wasn't ever, he's the oldest. So he wasn't ever, I guess, dragged to that step. So I said, yes, you have girls now, and this is what you have to do. So, but he ended up being so impressed with it. And,
and that's the thing. It's funny that point, because if you didn't grow up going to the ballet, you think it's the weirdest thing. Like, everyone, if you didn't do this
or whatever. And
yeah,
it's like,
boring.
It's not boring.
Exactly. My husband was the same experience. He was like, this is incredible. Like, I want to do it again. And my husband is the most macho guy you can think. And he just didn't know. It was very impressive. So I think it's like, yeah, people have this perception, but they don't know how amazing it is.
Right. And I mean, he came out and said, those ballerinas and the male ballerinas are athletes. He's like, he said, I can't believe those leaps. Like he just kept saying it. And I was cracking up laughing because I'm just like, yeah, I told you. They train like an athlete, just like one, if not more. So, yeah.
And so they had this background, which I think it's amazing to kind of introduce your kids a little bit younger to this, because it gives them the opportunity of looking at, oh, do I like this? This may be something that I would like to do. So how did that, change once they were actually in the dance competition world? Because some girls, I would say, for my daughter, she likes ballet, but it's not her favorite. So she's not like, oh my gosh, like she will watch a ballet dance, but it's not her, like, the most favorite thing for her. And for me, I was like, oh, like I almost, it was like, really? But it's just her personality. She's more of like the sassy things, and she even like, other different things. It's just not her top, like her first thing. No, if she would choose. So how did you notice that your kids were more inclined to that?
Well, so I'm glad you said that about your daughter, because that was my thought about Siggy. Because I said, well, she's like my jazz girl. Like she's like so animated, and Eden is quite animated as well, but she's more like a graceful animation, where Siggy is like pow, pow, like she's the face, she's the snapping her fingers, like, all the things. And I was like, well, I have to, I'm not the type of mom that's going to be like, well, you have to do this because your sister's doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like willing to see how I could maybe split myself in half, I guess, virtually split myself in half to go 2 different ways. However, she said, well, Mom, I love those ballerinas. And she's like, I just love those shows. And, how everyone is together. And she just loved seeing like the Sugar Plum Fairy. And like, those were her things, like Clara, like she has a Clara doll in her room. And she was so excited about getting the point shoes signed every time we would go. And
That's
so
nice.
I thought, oh, well, maybe, and she's so young still. She just turned 7. So I'm just like, well,
oh, she's still young. Yeah.
Yeah, she's so young. And even, in her ballet training now, she only trains like 2 or 3 days a week for half an hour at a time, because that's about her. It's a lot more concentration. It's a lot more involved perfecting the art. So I think, with the proper training that we have, the instructors know. They're like, well, that's where she's going to be right now, because she's so little, like she can't even, go to some of these trainings and competitions that my older one goes to, because she's the youngest. that can go, a
Mm-hmm.
9-year-old. So, it was things like that. I was like, well, I just want to make sure, that she's not going to get burned out or just saying that because of her sister. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then, did you ever, so did you, I think you mentioned to me that you had to change to a different dance studio,
Yes.
right? And you guys were in, that was the first studio that you guys had been on. And then recently you made a change. Would you
Yeah.
mind letting us know like why you made a change and how did that transition go for you? Because I know a lot of moms might be hesitant to, oh my gosh, what is going to happen when I go to a new studio? How do I shop for a new studio? What are some of the reasons that maybe I should consider a different studio? If you can talk about that, what made you, what helped you make that decision?
Okay, so wow, this is quite the loaded question. Let me think how I can answer this in a diplomatic way. I think not generally speaking, because there are some competitive studios that I have friends in, and even in other states here, that are not this way. The place that we were at started to, for lack of a better word, I would say, get greedy. Um, I sort of kept myself in a little box of I don't say too much because I don't want anyone to know that I'm actually quite educated in the dance world and comp world and things like that. Because sometimes you can get a target on your head and they're like, oh, well, here comes Leslie and she knows everything. And
I
oh,
agree
and then,
100%.
right. I mean, you know what I'm talking
I
about.
know.
So like
Yeah.
then those things get put on your child. And I just said,
Yeah.
okay, I'm just going to play dumb because I'm going to play dumb and that's what I'm going to do. I would say what I mean by getting greedy is that, the more dances you enter and it's political and those kind of things. So they were sort of loading my intermediate dancer, Siggy, up with lots more dances because she can go anywhere in a competition because she's an intermediate dancer. The advanced dancers, according to the comp umbrella that we danced in that studio, you could be an advanced dancer, but you can only go so many places. So, and with your age as well, the age groups and all of those things come into play. So
Yeah.
my oldest daughter was also getting loaded up with more dances too, but she was already kind of used to it. Although it did get quite absurd before we left this year. It was just too much. And then my middle one, Siggy, I think she had, I mean, I don't even remember. I mean, it was upward of like 18 dances or something like that. And like, that's not counting the solos and the duo. Okay.
That's a lot for the oldest.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's insane. So was this decided upon like when they do the audition or they kept adding on later? Like how do
Um,
you even decide this many dances? That seems like a lot.
Well, you decide as a mom, you get to decide as a mom how many you want, but they don't really pay attention to what you say. They just put you in anyway because that's what they do and they want their best dancers here and there, which I understand that, but I think a lot of times it's frustrating because I'm like, well, I know she can do all of these acro tricks. I know she's little and she can be in the lifts and she can be in the front and whatnot. But I'm like, she's also 7 years old and she
Mhm.
needs to go to bed and she needs to not
Mhm.
be at the studio for her entire childhood. And then my 9-year-old, she's as well, she's still a baby. She's 9, and even if
Yeah.
she's more used to it and can handle it, it just made me look at it like, well, what are we really doing here? What are we doing?
It's so easy. I love that you said that. It's so easy to lose sight sometimes in the
Mhm.
dance world as a parent, as a studio. And you just go with the flow because, for example, and I believe it was the same for you with my daughter too. Once they put her in a dance, you can't say no to it.
Right.
So you can't just refuse to do the dance that they want you on because they already planned out, they selected the people. So you gotta, if you audition, you gotta be on the dances that they put you on.
Right.
And that at first can be like, okay, but if it becomes too many dances, what do? And you gotta go with the flow, but then you're not considering yourself, your time, even like the extra time that you have to spend now as a dance mom at the studio or waiting for a class, because now they have more dances to practice for, but also the child. So and then let's say your child gets excited for some dances, right? They're like, oh my gosh, I'm with my friend, in this dance. But you're like, no, that's like way too many. And then what do? So
You
it's
can't,
so
you can't. You
it's
can't
so
do
hard. You
anything.
can't do anything. And you just like,
No.
well, just pay and let it go. And just wow, you're not gonna have a life. Neither is gonna have your daughter. And it's hard having those late nights. Your kids go to school,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I am, when Evelyn was competing, because right now we're in Brazil, but when she was in the USA, she was being homeschooled. So that was easier for me. When I came to Brazil, because now she's in a private school and she's also dancing, I was like, how did those moms do it? Like, I have no idea.
Mhm.
Because it's like my daughter could sleep in and not have to wake up so early. But I'm like, now she has to be up at 6 o'clock. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, now I had a whole different respect for those kids because most of the kids went to school. And I was like, how do you do that? Because sometimes you're in the studio until like 9:30.
Well, and that was the other thing too. It started to get like, well, you have to have these privates with the studio owner. And my
For
kids are
what?
well, like for the solos or for the duos or
Mm,
things like that. Um, and they were starting to schedule them into when my daughters were getting out of school, like right away, like as in we would get in the car and drive right to the studio. And sometimes they were right before rehearsal anyway. So they were going, like, well, we're in private school now, but at the time we were in the public school, and we were going right from school until 8:30, 9 o'clock at night for these two little girls. Then they would come home. They're exhausted. They don't want to do their homework. They don't
no.
want to do anything. And my daughters, they still have tests that they have to study for and things like that. So for me, it just sort of got like, well, they don't have time to do schoolwork, but you're holding them hostage here at this dance studio for all these hours long. And what is it? What are we doing here? Because they can't miss. And then, you have that thing where you're like, well, if I push back, then they're going to say, oh, well, then sorry, we can't do it. We can't get her in this week. And then she doesn't get a private. And then, all the girls are all like, oh, well, I had one with this and da 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 da. And they're all talking to each other. And then you got that whole nother layer, Mom,
It's so
I didn't have
true.
a private this week. And I'm like, well, that's because you were in school, and that was not okay with me because like we're an education family, so I wasn't really okay with that. So that did not happen when we were first there.
Yeah.
It started this past season happening that way. So I really had to evaluate. I really just was really looking this year for sure.
Oh, that's good because you
Yeah.
know what? That you have to separate yourself and see what is best for you and your family. And you have to dive within yourself and be like, am I just going with the flow? Or do I really want to live this life? Am I okay with all the stress
Yeah.
that I'm going through, that my kid is going through? Because even going straight from school to dance, it's so stressful, isn't it? I mean, come
Mhm.
on. It's like they're
Yeah.
tired. They're like, oh my gosh, they're rushing to get in, get ready. And then I think it's amazing that you took that step to consider what was best and make that change. So when you went to look for a different studio, what are some of the experiences that you had, and what are some of the things you had in your mind to be sure that you're choosing the right place?
So to your point, um, it wasn't so much about how much time, it was more about where in the day it was and the quality of practices going on in that span. I would come home sometimes and my daughter would come from home from dance and I'd say, what did you do today? Oh, we didn't have stretch class. We did yoga instead. And
Mm.
I'm like, you did yoga? why were you doing yoga? That's the dance studio. Like, oh, they didn't have the teacher today, or there weren't enough, it was always, it turned into that kind of thing. So I said, well, okay, my girls love dance. And we had so many conversations. I said, do you guys want to quit dance? Do you want to be done with this? Because I'm okay if you want to be done. I'm doing whatever you want to do. No, mommy, we don't want to do that, but we don't want to be like this. My 7-year-old melting down because she's so exhausted. My 9-year-old worrying about her math test because she didn't have time to study. Mom, it's 9:00 at night. I'm so tired. I can't do this. You can't keep a 9-year-old up until midnight. You can't do that.
No. And all her friends had time to study,
right.
She didn't. So she feels completely like unprepared.
Right. Or, and I just thought, well, what's really going on over there? And then I sort of just got some inklings of things that were going on that were not really quality things that usually happen at a dance studio. So I was like, okay, well, if we're going to do this and you girls love dance, then we have to figure it out. So we did have tons of those conversations. What do you want to do? What do you want to focus on? We did start looking in January of this past year, right as comp season was gearing up. So I sort of had to take them around and look and look at places and take classes and talk to the faculty and see how they do things and other moms that I know that may have gone there or go there. Part of it too, I think for my oldest, when she got accepted into American Ballet Theater's summer intensive that we just got back from, she got accepted. I think the audition was in March, maybe February or March. I cannot remember. But it was, I just, even right now, I'm like giving my mom a pat on the back for doing that, because I did that kind of by myself with her Zoom ballet teacher. And she said, I think she's ready for this. I think she's great. And as soon as she did that, I think she just said, Mom, what is this? What is this? And I said, this is the dance world. This is the ballet world. And she said, I want to be here. I want to do this. Like, she was so excited. Like, it was like she was floating around that city. And I just thought, okay, so that was the first thing we did. Really, we did that audition kind of by ourselves, not so
tell
much
me,
blessing.
I don't mean to cut you, but if you just can tell us a little bit, what is that audition like? So for somebody who doesn't know, what is it that you guys had to do to give her that experience?
So we did, well, I can't really tell you much because it's extremely private, because you aren't even allowed to go up in the building. Like, you, for the audition, we were allowed to go up.
I don't mean for the audition, but how did she get accepted?
Oh,
what did you have to do to get her accepted into it?
So,
you had to do that prior.
Yes. So that audition was what you had to do. So you either have to have at her level, they usually don't accept 9-year-olds. It's not like a thing. You have to have someone recommending you who is high up in the dance and ballet world. I mean, there are comp judges that can also do that if you are interested in going that avenue and they know someone or have observed your dance, experience, and they feel like they could lead you there, then yes. So you have to basically have someone recommend you, and then they accept you for the audition. So yeah, so it wasn't a lot of people. Like, there were not a lot of 9-year-olds. Not
okay, and that's why I'm asking, because I haven't heard about it, and I wonder how it was. So okay, that's nice.
Right, and at our new studio, there was a mom, and her daughter's 15, and she said, "Wait, you just got back from ABT? I thought you couldn't even do that until you're 15." And I'm like, "Well, usually they only want like the point ballerinas." And I'm like, well, she's like, oh, how did you do that? Like, she was very like, oh my gosh, how did you get that? Like, so it's like a,
that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, she just like was glowing. So, I mean, we had the best time. So yeah.
And how long was that for?
2 weeks.
Okay. Oh, that's nice. You got to enjoy the city too. Yep. And yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. That's cool. So, and then, right now, so, have you guys started back into the new studio now since you've been back?
Yes. So, we kind of we didn't miss a beat. We didn't really have a break. So we were done with the regionals for the other studio in May. And right the week after we left, started the intensives for the new studio that we're at. So they had 4 intensives all summer. And we didn't even miss any of those because they just happened to land right how it was already for ABT, how we were going to be gone for 2 weeks. We didn't even miss them. So they were like,
Mhm.
oh, that's perfect because you won't even miss any. So we just kept going the whole summer. And then we do Zoom privates with our Zoom ballet teacher too. Those never stopped either. We just kind of, there wasn't any lag period. So we just
No.
kept going. Yep.
Yeah. Which is
Mm-hmm.
kind of nice for them to not to like the transition wasn't even that much of a transition because they just kind of like kept going, through their routine, but just different, places. And do they how has it been for you guys now, in the new place, new studio, for the kids and you?
So it's definitely an eye opener. I don't know how to put this without sounding like I'm putting a negative spin on it, but the moms are different. The girls are different. They're just more they're not so worried about socializing, or the social aspect is different by way of, the girls are very serious and they all want each other to do well because in the end, like, you are in a show with all the other ballerinas, and if you're not doing your stuff, even if you are a lead, it's more of a teamwork environment. Um, I would say yes, those happen. That happens in group dances as well in the comp studio that we were at. However, there was always an underbelly of negativity and toxicity when it came to, a solo or this or that, or who's in a duet together and who got asked and who
No.
didn't. And there's zero of that. And there's absolutely, like, you're not allowed to have your phone in there. The girls leave their phones in the lobby in their bags. Like, you aren't allowed to videotape. Everything is extremely serious and
I
professional.
love that. I
I'm
love
I'm
that.
obsessed with it. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you're here to do this. Like, you're not here
Yeah.
to TikTok. Like, you need to go do that.
I
So
agree. It seems
yeah,
like they're more focused on the training and the girls succeeding in the dance world and as people than
yes.
the other drama and other stuff. And I even love the more like when I grew up, I wasn't allowed to even like laugh inside of my dance class. And I'm okay with that because there's a
Same.
certain
Yeah.
level of discipline that it goes into that. I would get in trouble if I look at my friend and we're making jokes and all of that. And then I remember my daughter was in the studio, we would see through the camera. The girls are like, don't care. Like some
Mhm.
girls, and my daughter is a very serious. She's super serious, and she likes things. And she'll be like, she moved to a different bar, and the girl, another girl would go to the bar, and they're just being silly during the dance class. And I'm watching through the camera, and I'm like, is this okay? Like they're not doing anything, like more like
Yeah.
loose. And I'm like, I'm okay with bringing some, discipline back. Like just the seriousness of what dance is, especially ballet, it comes with it, So I kind of like that because even you talk about the phones. I remember one time in the studio, I saw the girl. I'm not even kidding because I was outside in the parking lot in my car. I would see the girls do the, when you go diagonal, you do your routine and do it. And then as soon as they got to the end, they grabbed their phones and they were on the phones until it was their time to go on the left side. And I'm like,
Mhm.
in the middle of the class, I'm like,
Mhm.
there's no way that they should be allowed to do this. There were older girls still, but I'm like, I would like things to be a little bit more serious, especially like you're spending time and, money. And yeah, I think you can take those things for life.
Right, and your kids are spending so many hours there. It's like, well, what are they really doing there if they're just like waiting around and messing around, or like, going in the lobby and TikToking, or going outside and running around and not, running through the parking lot, and there's cars going through the parking lot. Things like that were happening, and there was just a lot of other things that were just going on. And I said, well, we are actually, this is so funny. I thought it was going to be less time. We are actually more committed now with this new studio. However, it's different because we're all like, that's great because we know what you're doing there. And the girls are like, we're doing this. Like, we know what we're going to be doing when we're there. We're not like just socializing so much. And they do have these shows. This studio does not compete by way of sending the whole group to a competition or things like that. They will pick certain ballerinas and say, okay, we're going to have you guys audition for Youth America Grand Prix, or we're going to start, training you for that, or like ABT. Like, I mean, the two, there's countless ballerinas there that have all gone to ABT, and they go every year. Or Boston School of Ballet, which is like a boarding school that you go to in summer. My daughter got accepted to that one too. Like, so it's like they're all doing it, and that's different but the same. And I've explained that to the girls, and they're like, well, that sounds great, and
that's more personalized, and you also, yeah, it's kind of nice. And you also, because you don't want these girls to be training. Let's say you stay in one studio and you train so many hours, and you think you're doing amazing, doing great, and then you show up in front of people that are actually taking serious, and you're like, oh wow, like you know what I'm saying? Like, you can be so far behind and not even know.
Lie, Nora, we had to relearn things because the two studio owners sat me down and said, we don't know how to tell you this, but your girls have been learning things wrong their entire dance career. And I said, I'm pretty sure I could hint that because they don't really have people with your accolades there. And, you look at their accolades versus what we were at. And I said, that's okay. I'm not insulted. That's why I'm here, because I want them to love dance. I don't want them to be so burnt out and they hate it and they think, well, this is all dances and I don't like that. That's why I started to look around for avenues in the first place. And granted, if they decided, no, Mom, we don't want to be ballerinas, we still want to do competitive dance, I know of, 3 other area dance studios that do not operate the way at the place that we were at. And I was like, well, we can go there instead if you would like to do that. Or we can do only conventions or things like that. Whatever you want to do. I just didn't want them to think this little box we were in was the way it is. And then they're like, I don't like that. So. But I love this. We learn.
Yeah. Because
summer doing that.
Yeah. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing for them to know this early on and start working on those, training. And it's great to not be in the box. Me and my husband, we've always had a thing with this. Like, we are now in Brazil with Evelyn. I said, Evelyn, you're going to this dance studio. And I said, when we leave here, you're going to another one. Like, stop trying to be in this box where you're going to be in one place with the same people all your life, just because you guys are growing up together. It's like, life is not that. Like, life can be so much bigger. You're going to limit yourself to opportunities, to people you can meet, to training, if you always want to be in the same place. We've always been all about it. It's like, we're not going to be in a box. Like, this place may be like this. We're going to try another studio. Like, try this, try that, and see what you love. And because there's nothing wrong too. You're investing so much money in your kids, and it's such a precious time of their life, and they're doing what they love. If you can find the best place for them, why not do so? You know? And the environment too, it's so important. It's like the whole drama gets old. The whole, people spending time talking or doing things that they don't want. It's like, I want my daughter to, keep doing what she loves and getting better and being challenged. These are the things that matter. And obviously having good friends. And because if it's not that, it's not worth it. Even for us, it's a lot of, unnecessary headaches, for the mom too, because we spend so much time there and we don't have to.
Right.
So that's nice.
Yeah. And I know your daughter's a little bit older than mine. So that was the other conversation that we had. I said, when we leave the studio, your friends that are your friends will still be your friends. And if they don't talk to you anymore, then you just have to let them be. And, it's kind of, you could probably explain that to your daughter now and she gets it more. Mine are little. So I had to have this conversation in a different way because I didn't want them to think, oh, well, that little girl doesn't like me anymore. But,
it's a hard topic. It was hard for her because she had to realize that right away. Because what happened is that, and I understand because we're actually, in a different country now, but it was very like, boom. As soon as we left, you should talk to all these girls and nobody else was talking to her. It was so hard on her. And I
Mhm.
had to sit down and had that talk and be like, yep. At the end of the day, because I do remember a time when she had this girl that she really loved. And, she ended up having some mental, like she was having extreme anxiety and she was the most beautiful dancer, like amazing little girl. And her mom had to pull her out of dance. She couldn't do classes anymore. Like it was getting that bad. And I remember at the time, my daughter was the only one talking to her all the time on the phone. I would be like, who are you talking to? She's like, her. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how is she doing? Tell her I said hi. And I would come. And then she would tell me, Mom, like nobody else talks to her anymore. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's so sad. Like she was just there, like best friends with everybody. So she had that experience. But you know what? It made her stronger. It made her be like,
Mhm.
at the end of the, and it's not even like a bad thing. It's just like, this is life. It's okay. You're going to make new
Right.
friends, open yourself up to new friends. And that's fantastic. It's just for the seasons. There's seasons in your lives that you're going to have different people in your lives and you move on. Don't get so attached and make new friends. And she has friends here that she loves now. So, but at
Right.
first it was definitely challenging.
Yeah, and I had that conversation, and I think my 9-year-old was more worried about it than my 7-year-old. I mean, Siggy is like, I always say, I'm like, she's like a little old lady in a tiny little person's body because she does not care. She's like, that's fine, Mom, because I have these friends and others, this, blah, 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 blah. Like, she's just like, fine. And I think my 9-year-old was kind of like, oh, I don't know. But it was interesting because you could see who fell off and who didn't. And I said, see, Eden, I said, these people are your real friends and it doesn't matter to them that you're not there with them all the time. And she said, well, you know what, Mom, I don't even care because I made all these new friends at our new studio. I mean, and the teachers there were they don't put up with that stuff. There's no bullying. Like you are not allowed. You will be gone. They do not they do not care about that. That is like a thing. Like do not do that. It's so more team environment. And even if say Eden gets sent off to an audition and one little girl in her level does not, there's no like, well, you got sent and I didn't. It's they celebrate. They do like a celebration of like your strength is this, whatever, and your strength is this, and we're going to do this for you, and you're doing this. Everybody has their little place, so there isn't the rivalry. And I think one thing I want to say to like any dance mom, it's important to just like quietly observe the way the teachers might contribute to the negativity. I did a lot of quiet looking and not commenting for many, many, many years. This last year was the one I finally started to put my foot down. And once I did that, I started to see, oh, well, now I know where it's coming from because you can tell the way people react to you when you start to have a boundary up. So that's what happened. So, but as far as like the friends thing, yeah, it's hard. Some of these friends aren't there anymore. And I have to say, well, you know what? There's nothing wrong with you. You're great.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do
Learn
with you.
learn
Like,
to move on. And at the end of the day, you are showing here, moms, that not every studio is the same. It's all about the culture of the studio. And once you're in that culture, there's nothing you can do to change it. So you might have to just look for a different place. And there are different places. Like there are moms who right now hate the studios that they're in, and there are moms that love the studios that they're in. Like both the adults love it, the kids love it. And if you're gonna spend that much time in it, yeah, make sure that you guys are enjoying it and is a healthy, and it's just even the boundaries that you set, like those are healthy boundaries to have. Those are, the adult there is setting the standard and everyone else is going to follow that standard. So nothing wrong with that. So that's awesome. I'm glad you're able to do this for the girls and that they're enjoying. I think I'm all about change. Like take a
right.
risk, make a change, see what's going to happen. Otherwise,
It's fun to
just do it.
change. It's
Oh,
fun.
yeah. It's fun. It's exciting. You just like, come
Mhm.
on, you can't be doing the same, boring things. So changing now the subject a little bit. So I wanted to touch on this for moms who are listening, because I know a lot of my moms are either, business owners or they want to be business owners. And you have a successful home design business with your husband, and you've had it for many years. So I want us to talk to us a little bit about that, and how has it helped, you know, your family? How has it helped shape now your flexibility that you have with your kids, and maybe, how much you can invest in them? How was that journey for you guys?
Okay, so I could start with like a brief background. So when I met my husband, he had already graduated from college, and he had started while he was in college a side woodworking business. He's like, well, I really love woodworking and creating, and he's an artistic spirit too. So he just started that while he was going to school and playing football in college, and all the like normal things that you do. And then he got his degree and started doing that. Well, and I'm a little bit younger than my husband. I got my bachelor's degrees in fashion design, interiors, and marketing. And then I went and got my MBA right after that. So while I was in school, I was kind of doing real estate things. I was buying and selling condos. I was working, but I would buy a condo and then I'd do it, fix it up, and sell it. And that's what I was doing a couple times, just as something to try out, because that was my avenue of interest. So then when we met, it was like, oh, you're doing that? Well, I kind of do this. So it's sort of like married together, the two things. So we sort of, I guess, fed off each other that way with our experience and what we had going on. So that's how we started the business together. And we also have a commercial real estate business, which I have some knowledge of that. He educates me on that because he's more educated on all those things. And then, I always like to help with all of the clients doing interior work, because sometimes you're just like, I need tons of help. I don't know what I want. And it's awesome when they don't know what they want, because I'm like, all right, here's all the things, like, let's start diving in, and it's fun because you get to be so creative and just like, it's fun to hunt for like really cool design ideas and present things to people and see how they think about them. So yeah.
Wow, that's awesome, because the beginning of your journey, you were doing things on your own, even in college. I think that's
Mhm.
so impressive, because,
Mhm.
a lot of people in college are just either just have a job to pay the bills, or they're not doing anything at all. They're waiting to, gain that experience later on. So that's amazing that you're already out there, like, hustling and buying condoms and selling them.
Well, to be honest with you, my parents are from Europe, so I didn't have a choice. If you know anything about European parents, they're like, get to work.
Yeah.
But you
Yes,
know what I mean? Like, I had the drive because I was
I
looking at
love
them.
it. There's
So,
nothing wrong with that. I think, like,
mhm,
it just instill in you more drive to go and work. There's nothing wrong
mhm.
with that. So that's amazing. So where from in Europe are your parents?
My dad is from Italy and my mom is Ukrainian. So
Oh, wow. A great combination.
my house
So
is really loud.
yes, yes, I
Loud.
can imagine. Yes. My
Yeah.
dad is also Italian and Brazilian. So it's like the
Mhm.
family,
Oh,
it's just
okay.
so loud.
So loud
Uh
and louder. Yeah, loud,
Oh
loud and
my
louder.
gosh, a lot of
Yeah.
people and everybody's
Mhm.
talking together. So it's a lot of fun. But I can see that from, our cultures is it's very much instilled into you. Yeah, you got to do that early on. So how have you been able to balance business and motherhood? Has it been challenging? I'm sure it's easier now. So maybe tell us some of the things that you had to do, in the beginning, to sacrifice to get to the point where it's a little bit easier now.
So at the beginning, it was not terribly difficult because we did not have children right away. So I waited, 5 years before I decided. I was like, all right, well, we should have children now. And that was cool because it sort of gave us together the feel of how we would work together, or how I would work. Like, he has an assistant too, and like how we would work with other staff, how we would, he apprentices people in our wood shop, because we own our own wood shop. Everything is custom. We do not send out anything. Everything is made where Santa's Kitchen and Home, like under the umbrella of all of our things. So, there's a lot of nuts and bolts when it comes to that kind of stuff. So and on the design end, I had to just feel out clients, the kind of clients that were coming our way. And the arena that we are in versus other, home design arenas. And once I started having children, it became a little more difficult. I actually had pretty easy pregnancies, so that part wasn't hard. I was like, oh, yay, I get to do something, because I was actually very bored. Because I was like, oh, I'm not sick. Nothing's happening to me like everyone said, so I'm fine. So let's do something, So
That's
now,
amazing.
yeah, I mean, when they're babies, it was kind of like, okay, all right, nap time. Now I'm out of here. Now I'm going to answer this email. Now I'm going to do this. Now I would say it's more difficult because they're older, which sounds backwards to a lot of people, I think, but it's actually not, because I have to be places and drive little people places. They're not.
That's the biggest difference. I mean, when they're babies, it's so easy. They go with you everywhere.
Oh my
They're just
God.
sleeping. They're here. Yeah. It's just different challenges now, for
Right.
sure. Yeah.
So
But I mean,
now
yeah, go
I
ahead.
take on clients I can take on, or I just offer advice. I'll say, well, you had this meeting today with so-and-so. I think this should be the route that they go. Or he'll come home and say, all right, here's a problem that was presented in this particular job site we are on today. What do you think about this? And it's more, I would say it's part-time for sure. I mean, it's not like how I was working in the beginning. I will get back there once I don't have to live in my car anymore for activities and school pickup. But even then, when I'm in the car, I'm like, okay, answering an email, or I'm doing, different things, just a little bit less, because I want to be present.
Of course. And I think what is cool about this is that you worked your butts off, because I know it wasn't easy to get you where you
No.
are, right? It was, right? It was not easy.
Mm-mm.
It couldn't have been. But you guys build that foundation. And because you did that, now you can slow down a little bit and invest more time in your kids and spend more time with them, and even invest, in their dance journey, and be able to go to New York with them. And for a lot of people who have jobs, this is impossible. If you
Right.
have like a 9 to 5 commitment, or if you are, in the really beginning stages, you might have to commit a lot more. But I think this gives people the understanding that at the end of the day, it's going to be worth it. Once you get that, phase of like, we're going to do all this for this, many months or years, however it takes, it will be much easier then. And I think that's awesome that your daughters are able to experience more of you, being present with them and doing all those things with them, instead of
Well, and
having,
the other
or not
thing
being
is,
able to.
right. And the other thing is, we are expanding. We are in a huge expansion period right now. So while I did go to New York with my daughter, my husband could not go. And, that's part of owning a small business, is like, we could do those things, but I'm like, well, daddy's not going for 2 weeks. It's going to be me. And he came down, of course, for the end, for the stage performance. But that's a thing too. Like, she was like, well, I wish he was here. And, but it's, it's give and take. You just have to decide what is important. And that was the other part of, changing our priorities, I think, is that I just was like, well, we need to go on vacation, and we need to get together as a family as much as we can, because my husband works a lot, and he works all hours, and sometimes he goes back to the office when the kids are tucked into bed, and he'll come home at 1:00 in the morning, but those are things that happen. But I'm also like, well, things can happen. That's fine. But we also have to go on vacation. So that was sort of the other conversation we had of, how are we going to change to get back to there? Because it's a balance for sure. I mean, it's never so smooth. It's never.
No, it's never going to be smooth. And I think at the end of the day, men are always going to have this tendency. Like, if they're in business, they're going to work. They're always going to work. They're always going to expand. Like you said, now we have this. Where do we expand to? So I think it's okay. You just, I think, have to be more organized with now, like planning those times, the holidays and vacations, that we can really spend some more quality time together. But at least he's also, I'm pretty sure that he's very supportive of the girls and seeing what they're doing, and be able to, like, when he can be there and make that a very special occasion. Like, I grew up with my dad, he was very busy. He was like, I remember him a few nights, and then on weekends, because my parents were separated, but it's like, he wasn't there all the time. No way. But when he was, it was so special. I never felt like my dad was not present at all. It was just like my dad works a lot. He was a business, he was a businessman, and I loved it when he was there. It just made it more special. My mom was there every day, it's just it is what it
Right,
is when
right,
you're a mom. But when
right.
dad was there, it was like, oh my gosh. So I think there's that part of like being a dad that it's okay. That's the way I feel, because I didn't feel like it was a problem at all. And again, like when I would go on vacations with my dad, oh my gosh, it was so much fun. Like he would like
Mhm.
give us the time of like that vacation. He would spend all the time with us. So it was the best memories, but it happened like twice a year. And that's it. But it was the
Yeah.
best. I loved every moment of it. He was like fun because, that's a fun. And he would do all these things that I would normally never do with my mom. But it was very enjoyable. So I think that's my take on it.
Right. And I think that's important because, my parents were both white collar professionals and still are actually. My dad's like 80 and still works. But there was never a time in my childhood that I don't remember going on the most amazing vacations. Like I always tell my husband, he laughs. He's like, "Oh, Leslie, you're such a princess." But I'm like, you know what? By the time I was 12 years old, I was so sick of going to Disney because we went to Disney in California. Then we'd go to Florida. We went so many times. But I was like, well, saying to my husband, I said, that's the point, is that my parents were so busy, but when we had the time, we just did it. And we did
Mhm.
it. And I remember, and they were there. And my dad wasn't, back then, I'm like aging myself. No one was on the phone because there wasn't really
Yeah.
one, I guess. There wasn't like a phone now, like how it is. But like we were all there. Like I remember
Present.
everyone being there. So that was the draw. I always said, well, we have to start doing that more because otherwise we're just going to you get in a routine where you're like, oh, I have to go to work. Oh, I have to this, or I'm on my phone answering an email. And sometimes you just have to put it down and say, okay, I'm going to get that in the morning,
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's a good point. I like that. Well, I guess, finishing up, what do you hope for your kids in the future? If you were to say something that you're looking at your girls now, that what is something that you think that you would hope that they gain from all of this experience that they're having, that they learn from this, something that they take it to heart once they are adults from this whole journey that they're in with dance? What would it be?
So as far as Siggy goes, I would say I hope she stays exactly the way she is because, like I said, she's just like an old soul. I really don't have to like give her the big life lesson so much. She already just has it figured out there, and she's kind of her own person and is independent and doesn't really need so much validation from the outside world for things. And I hope she continues to try things and be fearless because that's the way she is right now. Like she just is like, I'm going to do that or I'm going to do this. I would say Eden, I would love for her to be less well, I mean, she has a strong sense of self, but I would just want her to be a little less concerned with the outside chatter, I would
Mhm.
say.
Yeah.
So don't worry about that so much, I would say to her. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, as
Those
far
are
as
good.
dance goes, that they're very confident, I would say already. So and my little guy's in here now.
Yeah.
Okay, go
Continue.
big. So
Uh, It's
so
all
yeah.
good. I love that. Continue being confident and continue doing what they love, but at the same time, be yourself. So I love that.
Right.
Well, Leslie, thank you so much for giving me the time. I had a pleasure talking to you. I think this was like great conversation. A lot of
Mhm.
moms are going to take a lot from this. I appreciate your time. I hope we get to meet sometime one day, maybe in person. That'll
Mhm.
be awesome. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.